Figgy.
Okay, Morena, good morning. I always say nice to see you, and I can't even see you, but I know you're out there. So I hope you've had a good week. We are 30 days into a 50-day term, and we've got 20 days to go. And it'll be nice to think that we will see each other at some point, but we know we've got 7 more of this kind of school, and fingers crossed we'll get a few days at the end. But for now, we just got to keep it going. I'm not going to talk much this morning because we've got an awesome guest speaker. He is a Westlaker who's done incredibly well for himself, but most important to me, he's a great person with a great attitude. I can imagine he's someone who gets up every day with a smile on his face, and it's no surprise that he's been a big success in what he's doing, and he's going to share some of his experiences with you this morning. Mr. McBride's going to lead the conversation, but we are so excited and delighted to have with us today Izzy Whitley. So I would ask you to give him a round of applause if we were in assembly, but pretend they are Izzy. So over to Mr. McBride and Izzy. Enjoy it. Thank you. Have a great weekend, guys. Thank you.
Right. Good morning, fellas. I like Mr. Ferguson. I know you're all out there. The only person that you should be able to see now is Izzy, so that's pretty good. He'll talk to you for the majority of this, and I'm just going to prompt him on a few different little pathways and avenues we want to go down. So we've known each other, Izzy, a long time now, 8 or 9, 10 years. We catch up pretty regularly, and we needed someone to do this talk, and I text you, and I think I got a reply within about 12 seconds, and it said, perfect, love to do it, which is exactly the attitude we wanted. So we're going to avoid talking about COVID today. I don't see much point in that when we've got someone of your caliber who can share so many other good stuff. And I think where we want to start with you, could you give us any learnings from Westlake, or a little bit about your experience at Westlake that you think the boys could pick up on and maybe take some good habits from, or just things you've learned along the way that you enjoyed about school?
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, appreciate everyone tuning in, and especially at the time that is with the lockdown. Won't talk about it much more, but no, it's my pleasure being on here. And thanks for getting in touch, Andy. But a couple of things for me, for my learnings from my time at Westlake, which I found most interesting. I came from a school called Lytton High School. We're a Decile 1 school, and coming to Westlake boys, I think we were Decile, I'm not too sure, 9 or 10. At the time, I was always incredibly amazed and shocked at the high standard that was throughout the school. Always representing Westlake Boys High School, the brand, when we're in uniform and out, was always probably one of the biggest learnings to me. It was from the time you got on the bus, and from the time you realistically got outside of your uniform was kind of when you had to switch off on kind of maintaining a really high perception and reputation for what is a really incredible school. So being proud and having a lot of pride in the badge that you're wearing was a big learning for me. I never had that growing up, and that kind of transferred onto the footy field when the time came, and that was kind of the big reason, obviously, moving up. So to be proud in the school, be proud of the uniform that you're wearing in and out of the classroom, and then on the footy pitch was something that I definitely took and definitely learned. And that's something that I hope that everyone on here tuned in listening is exactly the same and feels the same, because it's not until you get out of school or you've been at a different school you realise how impactful and amazing a school like Westlake Boys is. I always really enjoyed the honest feedback at Westlake. I loved it. I spoke at the graduation dinner a couple of years ago, and I guess it's a 1 or 2 minute story, but I think it was my second week and some people find this kind of stuff a bit too PC, and the world, in my eyes, is a bit too PC. Everyone's a bit too scared of the truth. But I was in a stats class. Is Mr. McBride, is Mr. Hall still at school?
Absolutely is. He could be on? He could be listening now. So
if you are listening, he is one of my favourite teachers at Westlake. And
brilliant. I'd love to hear that.
The story I'm about to say, him and Mr. T-Bucks, Mr. Buckingham, of course. But one of the story I guess I'm about to touch in on really kind of reiterates the standard I guess Westlake expected of us as a young man growing up and ideally moulding ourselves into who we want to be. It was the second week at Westlake. He'd just put me on scab for 2 weeks because on the second day he told me to pick up some rubbish. I'd never been told to pick up rubbish in my life, and I told him no. And he said, "What did you just say to me?" And I said, "No, I'm not picking up that rubbish. It's not my rubbish." And then so he put me on scab for 2 weeks. I picked up the rubbish, and then I think I had a bloody red dot on my head for the rest of the time I was at Westlake, but it was for the good reason. We did this. He was passing around this maths test, and he said to me, he always called me Whitley. He said, "Whitley, if you can't pass this test," he goes, "you might as well pick your bag up, go down to Bunnings, buy a spade, and go and work on a construction site because that's all you're going to be able to do if you can't get through this." And I was absolutely shit myself that I wasn't going to pass the test. And I scraped in I think I got like 1 or 2 marks ahead of what I needed to just to get achieved. But I think that was a really big learning curve for me early on in Westlake. I'd had to adapt to the standard of perception and reputation that the school had, but also to have someone be really honest with me and to say, if I don't pull my head in the classroom, then that's actually my reality. I actually might as well not be in class and be taking up a spot when there's a wait list of other boys who'd actually much appreciate and be far more appreciative to be in that classroom than I was. So school was never my thing. I was never good in class. Mr. McBride, Bucky, if you're watching, I'm sure you can be the first to tell everyone that that's the case. But I think that just really set the standard, and it was an honest bit of feedback, which a lot of people think is almost offensive these days. So that would be a big learning. The honest input that I got and was constantly receiving, I really thrived and appreciated and kind of put into practice. And I guess the other big learning from Westlake was the consistency in everything we had to do. The year that I went to Westlake, there was an under-17 World Cup. Dylan Stansfield was our captain at the time. Being that I moved up for football, I kind of thought everything was going to be revolved around football. But I was absolutely amazed how professional the likes of Dylan and we had Warren Pinto and stuff like that who are in that squad. You had training in the morning, but then the commitment and determination they had into football training, they'd transfer into their classroom studies and equally into what they were eating at lunchtime, making sure they're putting the right fuel in their body. So I was amazed at the consistency of everyone who was a high achiever at Westlake. And it wasn't just in their designated or chosen sport, It's not like you've just got rugby players going to training to be the best rugby players and being poor performers in the classroom. Yep. It's just consistent all around. And I think that infrastructure around boys that you guys all have at Westlake is incredibly impressive and something I definitely look back at. So those are a couple of my learnings from Westlake.
Yep. That's great. That's great to hear, Izzy. And it's probably something, it's not until you leave school and you reflect on it that you actually understand that that's what was happening at the time, that character formation, those routines and habits, which sort of leads us on naturally, I suppose, to, you're getting ready to leave school, or we fast forward, you have left school and there's a bit of a story about, you had an idea to set a business up. I think you had 500 bucks, it said, in your pocket, you told me, and we're going to go for it. What's that like as a young man going to make his way in the world, not necessarily 100% certain about what you want to do, but you've got an idea, you feel like you've got some enthusiasm and entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, it's easy to look back now and I've told the boys we're talking about $50-60 million worth of revenue in a short period of time, but can you reflect back on that moment of, hey, I'm doing this, I'm taking the plunge, what that was like and the process you went through?
Yeah, it's interesting because I never, no one in my family's doing anything to do with business, and to be transparent and open with everyone on the Zoom, no one in my family, extended family, uncles or aunties would be earning over $100,000 a year, and that's just to put things on the perspective of that we're not a family of businessmen that have come from kind of a pretty humble upbringing. So. When was a point when I left school, I went and did a bit of my building apprenticeship unfortunately lost my dad to suicide when I was 20. And then I had a bit of a heart hiccup. Oh, I had a couple of heart attacks when I was 20. So a year later. And it wasn't actually until I was in the hospital bed that I thought, shit, I need to start making some money somewhere else. And I knew that when I was building, my boss was making $6 an hour off me. So the maths for me was if I could get 5 people working, that was going to give me about $1,000 a week in gross profit. And I'll be able to live enough of a life to decide what I wanted to do next. So it was actually in hospital, at North Shore Hospital, lying there kind of alone, thinking, how the hell am I going to start making some money outside of kind of football coaching and stuff like that, which I was doing just around the corner at Forest Hill. So I came from nothing, didn't have anything to lose apart from my $500, and that's all that I had in the bank account, and just went for it. I didn't really look back. I didn't seek anyone's approval or advice on whether they thought it was right, wrong, or I think that's probably because I was a bit naive, and at the time everyone's probably a bit cocky and unintentionally arrogant when you're that age, and I think that's kind of probably what got me to the first step, and then it was just going from there, and moving forward. So that was a start day. I'll never forget being in hospital and doing that. And 3 weeks ago we celebrated our 5 years. So it was just about being brave, really, taking a risk and doing what some things that other people aren't doing.
Yeah, that's good. And Izzy, we've spoken before, and I think it's maybe a bit of insight. You've mentioned it there about your dad and heart attacks, and these are pivotal moments in anyone's life, let alone someone who's under 21. A lot to cope with. Could you touch on some of those sort of the mentality and the mindset and the attitude that you've had to adopt? I mean, we often, there's something called the adverse childhood experiences score, where you can look at everything that's happened in your life and you can make some predictions around what people's life's gonna look like, and you would score highly on that, given all of those things. But yet you've overcome that, and it shaped you. Could you just give us a bit of perspective on what some of that was like, and how you moved forward on it?
It's interesting because you can, it probably kind of goes back to, I guess, what Mr. Hall kind of angled at me when I was 17 coming into Westlake. Like, you have to ask yourself the hard questions. Like, all right, I can sit here and sit in a pool of sympathy and ask everyone to feel sorry for me and make loads of excuses as to why I can't kickstart my life again. But the honest question is, if I'm going to do that, then I'm not going to end up anywhere. Or I can kind of pull my head in and get going. I think I've always been probably grossly and unattractively competitive, and winning was always the first thing, and winning came first, having fun came second. That was always my mentality. That's probably not the best way to think about things for you fellas listening in, but it's definitely what got me through. And I just took it day by day. Every day's a new day, And transparently, the way my dad committed suicide, he jumped off a 8-meter building, right? So my mentality, every day I wake up and I don't want to jump off a building, is a great day, because it's a hell of a lot better than what my dad had. So that was always my mentality, and it still is my mentality. I'm waking up, I'm not feeling like that's what I need to go and do. So I'm bloody blessed and stoked to be alive. And there's a lot of positive things to kind of start your day off when you actually think like that. I always thought whatever I'm about to go through in the rest of my life is not going to be as bad as what I have. So I've kind of been to the bottom of the pit to then keep moving forward. So that's kind of a little bit about my mentality, and always stay in the fight, even when you feel like you're losing it. Stay in it, stay the hell in it, and keep fighting for a little bit longer, because that's often when you get the results, when most people put their hands up. So yeah, that's probably a bit more around the mentality and things side of it.
Yeah. To hear you talk with such vulnerability and raw honesty there, I know you can't see a lot of the boys. Well, you can't, they can see you, you can't see their faces, but that is so powerful. And to give that to them, to let them know that they are going to have tough days, and maybe not as tough as what you've mentioned, but it's amazing that you're able to go there with that. So thank you so much for that.
I think something like that too is you're right. It might seem like a lot to some people, and it might seem a lot to me, but there's like, I think for the boys listening, you have to realise everyone's worst is their own worst, right? Like everyone's got their own capacity. It's like what's an example? My girlfriend works. Her hours might not be as demanding as mine, but when she comes home stressed, it's not like I'm going to sit there and say, well, your day's not as stressful as mine. You actually have to realise that everyone's got their own capacity. So her most stressful day is my most stressful day. It might be that her hairdresser mucked up her blonde hair, which it did one day, and geez, honestly, you thought the world was going to come crashing down compared to me losing 50k one day, So, but you can't expect anyone to realise or understand what you're going through. So you have to be committed and disciplined to know that your worst is your worst and their worst is their worst, and that's always a big thing.
Brilliant. 2 words I'm going to pick up on there, Izzy, commitment and discipline. So, we just had a conversation before this went live of pre-pandemic, there was $1 million of revenue coming through your 2 companies. So the boys may now be thinking, wow, what a life he lives. He's probably on a super yacht somewhere and he's cruising around. Could you talk us through a little bit about, in the context of commitment and discipline, what your average, if there is such a thing, day looks like, or week? How are you working and what goes into this to make it happen?
So the first thing, like I said, we've celebrated kind of like 5 years 3 weeks ago, and my life fucking sucked for the first 3 years. Like, that's the honest truth. It was horrible. The commitment and output and hours was atrocious. It was unhealthy. So it took me 3 years to feel like I started winning, or was starting to get the feeling of winning. I lived off $235 a week for 2.5 years, which was I got from StudyLink. I lived in my best mate's sleep out, which was $120 rent, and then every week I'd get some petrol. I'd go to the supermarket, and bearing in mind, 3 years ago I was still living in my best mate's sleep out. So that's to put things into perspective of the commitment and sacrifice you have to make. So I'd go to the supermarket every Sunday and I'd get 21 $1 Maggie soup cup chicken noodles, and that was my 3 meals a day. And if I had some left over, I'd get as many cans of Coke as I could, because I bloody love Coke. So that was my routine of meals, of eating. That was my fuel that I was putting in my body, and I did that for a couple of years, and then things start to get a little bit better. So that was for 2 years what I was surviving off, and then the 3rd year, the first salary I paid myself was $37,500. So it's kind of like, it's and again, that was 2 years ago. So you have to sacrifice so much. I pay myself a modest salary. There's benefits to a successful business when they start to get that way. But I'm always really conscious of making sure I'm having the right perception. It's a hell of a lot tougher than what it is to get to certain places, and I still don't feel like I'm successful. I feel like I've got 5 years till I get to that point. So it's a lot of sacrifice. I think the best way to example is probably a regular day for me. I wake up at 4:45 every morning. Alarm goes off. I'm not on lockdown. Wake up 4:45. I'm on my way to the gym at 5 a.m. I absolutely hate the gym, so I never use the weights. I just go for a run, put my gear in the locker, go for a run, come back kind of 6 o'clock. I'm in the steam room without fail every day. I'll go to the steam room every working day. Sweat out some things. That's when I have some really good thinking. Jump in the scrubber, get changed, on my way to work at 6:45, into the office at 7. 8 o'clock every day I have the same breakfast. I have 3 poached eggs, 1 bit of toast, side of mushrooms and some tomatoes, and that just gives me consistency. And whatever happens in the rest of my day, I know that I'm in control of my time at that period, so it gives me a bit of a refresher, and doesn't feel like everything else controls me. I kind of finish my day at 5:30, go home, have some food, and then kind of 7:30 till 9 o'clock, I'll start catching up on some emails, and then kind of 9 o'clock till 10:30 or 11, I'll be reviewing some documents and preparing for the next day, really. So I don't like sleeping much when I'm in the mode and I got my mojo going. I think I always like to make sure I'm awake and productive and efficient for more time of the day than my competitors, and I guess that's a bit of the competitive nature. So I guess that's what the normal day looks like now. It was a hell of a lot different back in the day. I think I was kind of waking up at 4 o'clock, working till midnight. I lived in the office for 4 weeks and it was horrible. Didn't actually go outside for 7 days once. It was just, and I was sleeping on a couch. It was horrible, but yeah.
And is there a moment where you felt, I know you've just said I still don't feel like I'm successful, or where you just thought, where you did think, I don't need to do these noodles anymore, where you started to feel like this had been all worth it, and whether it's you hit a certain figure or whether it's something happened, was there a pivotal moment when you thought, this is me now, I'm a entrepreneur, I'm a business owner, I'm going places? Or do you not let yourself get into that mindset? Nah,
not really. I still to this day wouldn't really consider myself an entrepreneur. You talk that the E word. It's when I look at some of those people around, it's kind of like they're all relatively creative and kind of constantly focusing on what's next. I don't necessarily look at myself and think I'm all that creative. I'd like to think I'll get to a day where I think I am. So I guess I'm constantly chasing the version of me that I want in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
But you have to have milestones and you have to enjoy it. I think I realised that I was probably doing a bit better than most people my age. When I was able to, I don't actually necessarily have the best relationship with my mum. And I love her. It's not anything, we just don't really get along. So my sister's been an incredible support mechanism for me. So I was able to kind of get her a gift a couple of years ago, and that was a stage where I thought I'm probably making a bit more money than most people, and I guess on the right trajectory. But never hear me say that I'm successful. I've got some clear goals in mind, and I'm sure when I get there, I might be able to start whispering the S word, but I'll probably constantly be looking for more.
Yep. Awesome. Just to put a little pause on this, we're going to open this up for questions. So we're gonna open up the question panel. If you've got any, fire them through, and we'll ask a few. One that came in earlier, just from one of the boys, emailed me directly. Actually, who do you listen to for advice? You're at the top of your game in some ways, but who do you go to for advice?
I listen to one person and one person only, and that gives me complete clarity and doesn't confuse my mind. I've got a mentor, the director of the two businesses, Rob Fife, who used to run Air New Zealand, and I've been working with him for about 3 years now. So he's who I listen to. I don't seek advice from anyone else, and it's not that I'm naive or stubborn to it. It's just the best way to be, because you can go and listen to 10 different leaders on YouTube these days and you just confuse the shit out of yourself. You're better off figuring out what your strengths are, aligning yourself with a leader who's got similarities to that, and tucking under that wing and going from there.
Yeah. One just coming in, which is pretty good actually. What have you learned throughout this journey, if you want to call it a journey, about how to treat people?
People come first. Absolutely. It's people matter. The sooner people realise how important that line is, then that's, and it's no different to successful coaches in sport teams. Everyone's different. You can't just have a blanket rule on how to treat people. Everyone's got different levers. Everyone's got different emotions. So you have to learn to adapt to be a different to have a set standard as a leader, but equally be able to adapt and treat people differently, because everyone's got different needs and wants. So,
yeah. This is a question from one of the boys, one of our Year 9 boys, actually, really insightful. Was there ever a moment where you came close to quitting, and what did you do to not quit?
No, I haven't. I think I'm probably too proud, to be fair, to quit, because then I would feel like I've lost. But there's definitely times where you second guess it. But I always say a tough conversation or a jarring conversation is never the end of something. So you can have a spat out with someone, or you can have an emotionally motivated conversation on a Monday, but don't make a decision on a Monday. Make the decision on a Tuesday once you've had a good sleep.
Nice, good advice there from lots of boys can apply that, I think, Izzy. And another one, how big is goal setting for you? Is that something you do a lot of, and what's your goal setting looking like at the moment?
Nah, not really. I've got a big goal. My big goal, if I got put in the coffin and buried and I was worth 250 mil, I'd know that I've achieved my goal. But anything less than that's it. And I think I just need to break that down, and I break that down quarter by quarter. We've got annual financial goals, and that's clear as day. But it's just about breaking it down. I'm not one of those goal getters or goal setters each day and have this thing. I kind of just go with what feels natural and what feels appropriate to. I just have a primary and a secondary focus every day. My primary is my non-negotiable. My secondary can wait till the next day if my primary prolongs.
Again, that's certainly some advice we can take out. We'll do one more question, Izzy, and then we will just let you have the floor just to finish with any messages you want to give to the boys. So it's came through in 4 or 5 different boys, actually, just about motivation. What keeps you motivated? Maybe not just in business, but across the board. How do you maintain those levels of motivation?
You have to have a consistent routine. You have to find out what makes you tick. People talk about work-life balance. I don't think there's such thing if you want to be successful, but you need to find an energy balance. And I get a massive energy balance out of running every morning. So I know at 5:15 every day, and when I'm in my working routine, I'm going to be pounding the pavement, clearing my head, and motivating myself for what I'm going to achieve that day. And my running route, I run back and look at the CBD every morning, so it motivates me one day to own a building or something that I can see to let me know that I've achieved something.
So look, that's a pretty good way to finish that question. I've just got one, actually. I can't leave without mentioning this. Mr. Buckingham has just said, it's not a question. He said, you're an inspiration to these boys, Izzy, sorry. I've loved watching this. And I know that's someone you've got a lot of fondness for, so it's a bit of a shout out to him more than anything. But
cheers, Bucky. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think he thinks you're a better businessman than left back, but we'll leave that to him to tell you when he tells you. And we've got probably 2 or 3 minutes. What is there any parting words of wisdom you'd like to leave for the boys? I know they'll have this has been full of wisdom, but anything specific that you would like to end on?
Mine's telling me I've got 1 minute 10 seconds left before it cuts me out. So
all right, okay.
Something I want to leave with people is a big priority in my day is compound time and my road to where I've got to today. I always knew that I was never naturally talented or gifted at most things I did, but I was always confident that I was the hardest worker in the room. And you want to be able to know that you can work harder than anyone there. In a working year, over 52 weeks, you do 2,080 hours. My goal was always to do 4,160. So I wanted to do what people were doing 6 years and 3 years. So compound time catches up, and success catches up to those who work hard. So that's probably the biggest thing that I always focus on.
Brilliant. I don't think we've mentioned it in that way, compounding your time, but it's such to be able to delay that gratification and know, the good stuff will come if you put the hours in, put the time in. I think is vital for boys at the moment. Lots of people asking specifically what the business is, but I think they can probably find that out. It's ALH. We're right in saying ALH.
I think I'm cutting off in 5 seconds, so if I do, it's ALH okay. Solutions. But whether it cuts me out or not, I'll hang in here. But no, it's ALH. Where it's short for Aotearoa Labour Hire. And then we've got Fit Out Solutions, and that's a commercial and shop fitting business. So those are the 2 businesses that I'm involved in. ALH is the first one that I started by myself, and Fit Out's the second one that started with a range of shareholders. Yep. Maybe I'm an injury time on here anyway.
You possibly are, mate. We'll keep you going as best we can. So yeah, that's a little bit about the business, and you boys can go and look into that if you want to. every time we speak, Izzy, I leave feeling motivated and inspired and refreshed by your honesty and your competitiveness and the way that you live your life. And I know a lot of the boys will feel the same. And this might be the first time they've ever heard from you, but I think it's important to say you're not too much older than some of these boys that are about to leave school now. And it just shows what can be achieved in a relatively short space of time with the right attitude and the right work ethic.
And without a lot of natural ability. That's something that the boys should all know, right? I've never read a chapter book in my life. I hardly passed school. I didn't even get UE, so I had to go and do building. So I couldn't go to uni. So don't doubt yourself if school makes you feel like you're doubting yourself, because there's transferable skills that you need to take. Some people are academic, some people aren't, some people are more practical. So don't ever doubt yourself for that kind of stuff.
And that drive and belief and determination that you've got it has taken you a long way. It's going to take you even further, and hopefully the boys can really grab onto that. So I'm going to leave the last word to you, Izzy. I think we should definitely do that. So any parting shots, and then we'll say goodbye and we'll go.
Look, just hopefully you all find what you want to do one day. But until then, like I said, stay in the fight. If it doesn't feel like there's too much fighting for, just stay in it, and you just don't know when you get your lucky shot. And just always be prepared to work harder than the people next to you. And if you can do that, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So always keep that in your mind for sure. I'm 27 on Monday next week, so it's only kind of 10 years older than most of you. So shit, if it can happen to me and if I can do it, I'll tell you right now, you guys bloody can. That's for sure.
Brilliant. What a way to finish. Happy birthday for next week.
Cheers.
And we're going to record this and post it so boys who couldn't watch it live can see it. But from everyone at Westlake, Izzy, we're behind you. We're thankful for what you've done here with us and the wisdom that you've imparted. And you've always got a home in Westlake, and you're certainly a friend of the school. So thank you so much, and we wish you the best for the future.
Awesome. Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye now.